Hello everyone, I hope you're doing great today and enjoy these stories. Make sure you check out my Patreon if you want to support my channel, and make sure you check out my podcast in the description below too. Take care and I'll speak to you all soon. I'd worked in my job for about 10 years and I really enjoyed it. Though eventually I did kind of get tired of seeing the same things. Now, some of my friends said, oh, maybe you should get a different job and not work as the park ranger that I had for so long. But I don't know, there was something about it that I just couldn't seem to go away from. I wouldn't say I was necessarily drawn to work in the forest, but it just kind of connected with my soul, and I'd done it for a number of years afterwards. I'd like to share some weird things that happened to me with you guys, because I think it's important that other people know about them. Now, the woods are pretty big, and we don't really know too much about what's out there. Now, keeping that in mind, I'm open to the possibility that some of what happened to me was just done by weird people, but at the same time, I'm not really so sure. Now, this particular event happened when I was relatively isolated too. I was basically patrolling somewhere, and I eventually got moved to go and inspect a cabin. The cabin was fine and we knew that. I just needed to stay there for a couple of days just to complete all of my checks. Now, this is something I thoroughly look forward to. It meant I could read and drink my coffee and just bring a few newspapers up there with me and just have a nice time being there on my own. I'm one of those people where it takes a few days of getting away before my mind completely opens and gets off of the tasks and things that are around me. I was having a hard time escaping from some of the stresses of life. I was staying strong and getting on with things, but I was going full speed ahead and not really taking any time for myself to sort things. So I could really do with this break. Some of my other friends at work there said they found the same thing too, but they did report feeling weird when they were out in the cabin. They said that they had the feelings of being watched. I didn't really take much notice of this because obviously, if you're out there in the woods, these feelings can come across very quickly. So it wasn't anything to be surprised about really. I don't know. When you'd worked out there for a number of years, I guess you kind of got used to it all, so I wasn't really fazed. So I look forward to my journey. I remembered that on my last night before heading out there, things were pretty good, and some of the other guys there were just having a few jokes with me, trying to put me off the whole thing. They said, you know, there's Sasquatches out there. You heard about the bears that can come out of the trees and things like that, just joking. I didn't let it bother me though, and I said my goodbyes and set out. I remembered going home that day. I felt pretty comfortable and happy knowing that there was good things ahead of me. To be honest, my thinking was getting a little bit more negative at the time and I needed to get away. I won't go into too many details about things that was happening, but you could say it wasn't the greatest time of my life around now. I was using work as an escape really, which isn't the best of things, and yeah, everything worked out exactly the way that I wanted to. I'm now married with my wife and have a small boy on the way, and I'm really excited about this. I got another job that I absolutely love, just at the time those things seem far away. When I get home I make sure that I packed up all of my coffee and everything else that I could need for this. I didn't have to bring that many things with me. I had some cookies and other supplies and snacks. You do get the supplies out there, but they're kind of more like military rations or MREs if you call them that. So I wanted to bring some other sugary things to make this more exciting. The cabin actually has a fridge and it's relatively well stocked, but sometimes the fridge will go out, and that's going to be annoying because you're going to have a very hungry few day tenor there, which I was trying to avoid happening to me. I remember driving over from the gas station. I actually took the wrong turn and go back to the normal place that I work, forgetting instinctively that I was supposed to be in the cabin, and I turn around. One of the rangers waves me away and pretended that he was saluting me like I was going on a military mission I wasn't coming back from. I did it back, I didn't really think much of it. As I'm driving, the trees are providing some very nice shade from the intense sunshine. Now, it is one of those summers where the sky was beautifully clear, and it makes beautiful shaded areas in the forest. It was such a beautiful place to be. I really recommend anybody that hasn't been out there before to try it, because I think it's great. So, I continue on my drive, and there's some insects that are getting into my little truck, and this is annoying. One of them I couldn't get out for the life of me. I'm not sure whether it is a mosquito or what, because I was concentrating on the road, but God was it annoying. I actually had my shirt off trying to bat it, but then I realised that I couldn't put my shirt back on again, and it was actually quite funny. Nobody really knows about this. This is the first time I've told people about this specific detail. Now, eventually I managed to get to where I have to park up, and I dismount. I still don't know what insect had actually got into my truck. I just figure out that hopefully, after a couple of days of being locked in there, it will die. Or worse, it will have children, then I've got a new problem. But I'll worry about it later. So I get my box of things and everything, and I start walking down there. Now again, the trees are absolutely wonderful. I feel really at peace and happy. There's almost like every direction that I look in, there's nature all around me, and I couldn't feel more happy. I'm honestly beaming at this point. You can see the high rock formations all around me, and it looks incredible. It honestly looks like it's something out of a film. And I'll take my way across a bridge with a stream that once ran. Closer to the winter months, there'll actually be more water through this, but it's just become so dry that there's nothing there. Sometimes I wonder how the trees stay so strong and lavish, but they do. Now, after probably about 2 hours of hiking and seeing lots of dragonflies and other beautiful insects, I eventually make it to the cabin, and it looks pretty dusty. It looks like it's been coated by a sandstorm or something. It's a bit annoying because it means the other people that were there before didn't actually make any effort or progress to clean it off, and I find that quite annoying. It doesn't take any effort whatsoever for people to be courteous to each other and to make our lives easier, but hey, here I am. Now, I remember the first weird thing I saw is a turtle shell. There are no turtles that should be around here, but why is there a shell here? I thought maybe one of the other workers or hikers had left it here, but I don't know. Seems pretty weird. It was hollowed out too, which was especially strange. No skeleton or anything. So, I put the key in the door, pop my things down and make my way inside. And I met with a beautiful smell of coffee. Not bad coffee, but some unopened ones that people have left around, and other little presents for me to find. This makes me very happy, and I start boiling the kettle. Now there's something wrong with the kettle and it seems to constantly boil, and I go to turn it off. As I turn around, I think I can see something in my peripheral vision, but as I look there I can see nothing. I presume that it was just my eyes adjusting from the bright going into the dark, and I don't think much of it. Though this time I'm a little bit more scared, and I decide to close the door behind me. I met with a feeling of peace, and the cabin's really nice. It's quite basic, but you have like a toilet area, a little kitchen area, and an area to sleep. It's kind of like a studio design if you were imagining a modern apartment, where you've got one area sectioned off and everything else is in the same room. I don't have an issue with this though. I knew there wasn't that much water, so I have to really try and ration it. I don't have a clue when they last filled up the tank, and I don't want to be the person that gets left short of showers and things like that. Especially because of how hot it is out here, it can become really overwhelming very quickly, and I'm trying to avoid this. So I'm really having a great time at first. I decide to make some food and open up one of the MREs. After this, I drink my coffee and I have my cookies and I'm just relaxing. I know that I'm going to need lots of energy because I have lots of different areas to check. It's nothing too much, I just have to make sure that paths can still be travelled on and stuff like that. So I set out and do this. There's a really beautiful cool air as I set out and it makes me feel quite at home. As I step out, I do realise that I can see something up ahead of me. It's on one of the paths that I have to make sure is clear. And I can see it's a little bit overgrown, but I guess that's kind of normal. Basically, as long as I could get through okay, it would be a pass. If not, I would have to try and clear it out myself or make a note of it so people could come out and clear it. I actually have a shovel with me and I want to attempt to fix some of this myself. Now, as I make my way through, I come up to a large tree that looks like it's covered in moss, but is something slightly different. I'm distracted by this as I see something further. It looks like the silhouette of a person standing there. I don't think too much and think maybe, well, it's probably a hiker out here. I decide not to disturb or scare them. I think maybe if they see my shovel they might think it's a weapon or something from afar and become scared, so I don't make too much sound and just continue. I've decided that I should go around the path away from them so they don't really get spooked, and that's what I do. Now, eventually I have to loop back round and I get to the other area that I need to check out. I go across another little path which takes me over a stream that once flowed. It looks really pretty once more. I then realise that I can still see the silhouette. I do think this is particularly strange because it doesn't seem to have moved. I'm not sure whether somebody's left a jacket there, and I decide to investigate. I follow up some steps, and I keep staring at this thing, but I can't make out exactly what it is. Now, as I'm approaching, I'm feeling completely relaxed. I think it's just the environment and not really taking too many notes of the situation, but I was maybe too cautious, free, and think that I probably should have had a better approach to this as I get closer. I can see something staring at me now. I say something because I can tell it's not a person, but it was pretty weird. It looks like a black sheet with some kind of mask up on it. I can now see that it's a hood. It's not a hoodie, but it's kind of flowing down. And I can see the base of it as a tree. Somebody's left some kind of drape over this tree, and it doesn't look normal. I get closer and closer, and I presume that somebody's left a tent up here. I think it's weird because it's black, and I think, why would you want a black tent? You're honestly going to get scalderingly hot. This is certainly not the kind of tent you want out here. And I then have to start making my way off of the path. I'm a little bit annoyed about this because it starts messing up my uniform, which I really enjoy keeping pristine. I do, however, eventually make it over to the back of it and go to grab it and pull it down, but it's on there pretty tight. I then take a step to the side and I can see a skull. I don't know what kind of animal skull this is, but it kind of looked like the Halloween scream mask that you see every October, but almost like a makeshift home one. This is pretty bizarre. I eventually pull and I'm able to tear this thing down. I go to touch the part of the skull that's on top of the tree stump, but I decide I should probably leave it there. As my hands are probably an inch away from it, I just hesitate. I don't know, it just felt weird. I look this thing in where its eyes would have been for a second and I get the creepies. I realise that I can probably just kick this down though, so I use my force and I'm able to make the tree come down. And I'm quite happy. It was probably about 5 feet up in the air, the stump of this tree. And I'm glad that I don't have to see it anymore. The last thing I want to do is forget it's there, then have an absolutely horrifying moment as I make eye contact with this thing again in the dead of night or something. But that's pretty weird. that shouldn't really be there. I presume that maybe somebody's done it for Halloween, but this is in nowhere near to October. I don't know, maybe it's been there for a while, but I think this is odd. I take a few looks around and I can't see anybody or anything else. I just remembered that my hands felt very sticky too. It was almost like tree sapling, but somewhat different. It wasn't like this thing was glued up here, but it was certainly odd. I look around in all directions, trying to see if anything else is out here, but I can't see anything now. I don't think there's anybody hiding away too, but I do really think this is especially weird. It's the first time in my career actually that I've ever encountered something weird to this degree. I decide it's probably nothing and say to myself aloud, come on, you're the ranger here, let's get on with it. And I continue about my way. I go up some steps and start clearing another path. I start shoveling, and as I'm doing so, dirt is getting stuck to my hands because of whatever kind of sticky substance is on that robe thing that I pulled down, or that tent. It's actually quite disgusting. I'm usually not that creeped out by things like this, but it really makes me feel weird. I decide that I should probably head back now, and I start doing so. Now I'm not really proud of this, but I actually didn't do some of the surveying and clearing I was supposed to do for the rest of the day. I don't know, it was almost like something clicked in my head and I just couldn't do it. I kind of gone transitioning from being in the moment to being a little bit more cautious of everything, almost thinking more in philosophy about why was this here, what could it have meant. I head back and put the shovel down outside and I go in and start washing my hands. I really struggled to get this stuff off, but I'm eventually able to do so. Then I notice annoyingly that I've used up quite a lot of my water to do this. I decide that I should wrap up my shovel in bandage so that way I don't have to touch it again, and make sure that I wear gloves if I investigate anything similar. So, I actually use the rest of the evening just to listen to music on the radio and try and relax. There was something about hearing that voice in the cabin that really calmed me down. I actually have the door open now because it's so hot, and I just relaxed really. Yeah, I had more of a job to do, but in this moment I was a little frightened really. This goes on for the rest of the evening, and eventually it's time to get some sleep. I close the door, have the bandage on the shovel now, leaving it ajar to the door, and go out. I take one last scan of the perimeter and head back in again. I put my stuff to the side and decide to keep a knife near where I'm sleeping now. It's something I've actually never done before, and I realise why it's a stupid idea when I woke up the following morning and I nearly stabbed myself. Funnily enough, it's not far away from my neck, and I thought, wouldn't that be funny if I ended up getting myself like that? I radio in my findings from the following day, and I actually lied about what had happened and just said everything was normal, and I make myself another cup of coffee. The cup of coffee is kind of like my morning debrief with myself, where I plan out what I need to do for the following day, what I could do differently and what I could do better, and for today, it's to not get freaked out so easily by small things. That's what I say to myself. I do some positive affirmations and I get ready to head out again. Now what's weird about this morning is that there's kind of a mist that's settled. It's not fog, but almost like a morning dew. But I haven't seen it out here before, and it makes the whole place seem a little bit Halloweeny and scary. I go to look for the shovel, and I can't find it. I look exactly where I placed it the following night and I realise that it's nowhere to be found. No issues, so I probably simply misplaced it, I say to myself. I press on now, looking all over for this thing, but I can't seem to locate it. Okay, that's certainly weird. Again, I don't think too much of it and presume that, I was tired. I probably just forgot it somewhere. And I head out. Now I have to go about 40 minutes away from where I am now to do this further maintenance work, and I go into a really beautiful area where the trees are tall and quite skinny. That has its advantages because I have quite a good horizon here, and if there is anything or anyone, I'm gonna be able to see them now. The trees are actually really tall. I think they're probably about 50 or 60 feet or even taller. It's really cool. Don't know how many years I've been here, but I really like it. Now the mist eventually goes and I feel a lot more confident being out here on my own. I have my coffee with me, but where it started to become more summery and hot as the days progressed and the trees aren't as thick here, I'm quite hot and start to overheat a little bit, so I resort to just sipping it slowly. I'm sweating quite a lot now. I don't feel like I need the energy though, I just like the taste of the coffee. So I continue this walk and eventually find a tree that's fallen down onto the path. It's not too big, but I should be able to clear it. I don't have the shovel, but I ended up using a big stick and I'm kind of able to plant it underneath and using the end of it to tether it out of the way. It only moves about a foot at a time, but my god is it loud. It sounds like a whole tree's fell, and it made me jump at first. I don't know how my stick hasn't snapped, but I continue this process when I hear something. There's kind of like the sound of rain, or maybe like lots of cups being thrown at something. That's the only way that I can describe it. Or maybe like someone was shooting ping pong balls off of the trees. It was weird. I thought maybe for a second I set off a chain reaction or something and some other trees were going down elsewhere, but I can't see anything. Everything is impossibly still for the sounds that I'm hearing, and that's especially bizarre. Now, I scour the area for as long as I can. I even go off onto the tree that I've just knocked down to get a better viewpoint, but I can't see anything at all. This happens for about 4 minutes before slowly fading out, similar to how the sounds of rain slowly go off into the distance as the clouds go away. But that was especially weird. I'm very drawn in to where the sound was coming from, and it's further up the path, so I now head up this way. I have my stick with me still because I knew it was strong. I say it was in case there was more trees to clear, but I was a little concerned now. As I'm walking, I see movement now up the hill through the trees again. It's weird, it almost looked like something was kind of floating through the trees. I can't really tell because how far away it was, but it looked like something quite big was kind of moving through them freely. Almost like it wasn't interacting with the trees, but more just the ground on the floor. Almost like it was in another dimension. I walk as quick as I can trying to get closer to whatever this is, but I seem to get further and further away. And that's when I stop. I'm drawn to the ground as I notice something. I think my brain realised something shouldn't have been there, and what do I see? The carcass of a deer. Now, it's not really the carcass, more the bones. But only the bones. It's almost like this was dipped in some kind of acid or something, because there's nothing else around it. I can't see any flesh, I can't see any blood, just a deer carcass somewhat perfectly in the middle of the path. I start searching now, trying to see if there's any other signs of anything or anyone that could have made this, but there's nothing. I look further and further, trying to see if there's anything similar, but again, I don't see anything. Annoyingly, it's my job now to move it out of the path, and I don't want to do this. I ended up prodding it with a stick for a while, probably about 10 times before I'm brave enough to actually just grab it and move it piece by piece off into the trees and the bushes. Now that was really weird. I remembered when I felt it too, it felt kind of chalky almost. Like too dry, like bone dry, but even more so. I don't know how else to describe it. The only thing that was making it wet is my hands that are sweating. I'm not sure if this is from the situation or just because of how hot it is, but I'm suddenly no longer feeling the urge to investigate further. I continue my surveying this time, and I realise that I forgot my stick. I look around and again, that was nowhere in sight, which is weird because I was sure that I left it next to me when moving the bones. Now eventually I come up to another clearing, and all is well now. I feel a lot better in this open space, just knowing what's going on around me. I finished the job for the day too, so that's a good sign that I can head back now and try and get back to some relative safety. So I turn away and start heading back in the direction and the path that I've just walked upon. Now I get back and I'm at the point where I found the bones, but I can't see them. I think maybe they've sunk down into the ground a little bit, but that's quite weird. I should still be able to see the bones, especially because of how white they are. It should stand out from the background, but they're not there. I just think it's a good thing that it doesn't have to scare anyone else, and I think, well, maybe some kind of animals wanted them for God knows what, and I start to head back. Now the hike back felt probably twice as long, which is another weird observation. Usually I know exactly how long I've been out for, but I check my watch and I have been walking for the same amount of time, and it feels dreadfully long. I'm also quite tired. I go back into my cabin and close the door, and I fell asleep pretty quickly. Actually so quickly that I didn't even eat or shower or anything. I just woke up the following day about an hour before my alarm. So I eat, I get ready and radio in. And I say this time that I did find some animal remains, but nothing out of the ordinary, and that I've cleared it. They say, "Mikey, great, good job, keep it up, not long now." I say thanks, and end the call. To be honest, I was relatively frustrated at this point because I've not really had the relaxing time that I'd anticipated, but I've still got a couple more days left, so that can come soon. So I get my things together, get ready, eat some donuts this time, which are actually on the turn. They don't taste that nice, but give me the sugar that I need to head out, and I do some extra work. Now, as I set out this time, I have to survey another area and make sure that there's been no fires here or anything. Apparently this particular area is quite susceptible to having forest fires, and we just have to make sure that there's nothing that could potentially be causing it. It could be trash that people have left behind or illegal dumping. Believe it or not, people will actually dump things out here. How they get this far out, I don't know, but they'll bury things. But the problem is, it makes methane and other gases that are very combustible. And we have fires that are deep out here and quite hard to tackle. So, I'm walking down the path, and in this area the trees are also quite long and thin, but the good thing about it is that it lets you see miles around almost, or at least 500 meters in any direction, so I'm feeling safe now. To be honest, it's quite overgrown again, and a lot of the bushes probably come up to half of my height. It's okay, just makes it a little bit uncomfortable to trek through, but that's fine. Now, I get to the area that I need to survey, and I can't see anything there out of the ordinary. I do notice how the trees have suddenly got much darker now, and it almost looks like nightfall in this particular area. But that's not an issue, it just means that it's going to be a lot more cooler there, and it's going to be a lot nicer for me. So, on my go, much more braver than the last couple of days now, and I feel comfortable. So I'm mostly done now, and I take a few rests. I'm drinking water, and my canteen's actually running a little bit low. Normally this means I should just head back because dehydration is going to be really dangerous out here. But I continue onwards. I see a beautiful bird in this moment that I haven't seen before, and it distracts me from everything. I've never seen this kind before. It almost looks like a green parrot, but it's a little bit different. I noticed it's interesting because in all my years of working there, I've never seen it before, but that's fine. Now, I take a seat and I look up and notice something odd. It kind of looks like an owl at the top of a tree. It's quite high up, but it's a very weird shape. It almost looks like a dinosaur to me, and I think it's odd. I can also see partly through it, which I think is really bizarre. It's probably about 100 meters away, and really difficult to spot, but I do. I get out my binoculars, and I can't really focus on it that well. I know it's a bird, but it's really difficult to see exactly what kind of bird, and curiosity gets the better of me. When I was younger, I used to love going bird watching and looking out for animals like this, so I decided that I should investigate. The good thing is, it's on the path that I'm on, so I basically just have to follow it in a straight line to get to it, and that's exactly what I do. Now I get closer and closer, until I realise something odd. This is no bird, at least not no living one. Whatever this is, has died up there, and I'm looking at the bones. But again, there's no flesh at this, there's no blood, there's nothing. What only appears to be the skull and a few bones of something up the tree. How it was all held together, I'll never know, but I think this is really weird. I take out the binoculars and look even closer this time, and I soon realise that what I'm looking at looks identical to the remains that I'd found before. Now that's really odd. How on earth any animal or anything could have got up there is beyond me. It almost looks like you'd need a drone or helicopter to take it up there. It's really creepy to see. It wasn't moving though, it almost looked like the head of a totem pole with how perfectly it was stuck there. Wait, wow, am I getting scared now? I almost felt like I was in something's area and land, and it being up there was a sign that I wasn't supposed to be here. I try and mark down the exact location where I am, but I can't be too sure because I'm a little worried now. I decide to just forget about it and continue on the path and do the last parts of my surveying. I did these very quickly this time, and nothing out of the ordinary up here. I take a few seconds before I can actually turn around because I don't want to. I'm expecting to see something standing on the path staring dead at me in my eyes, but I have to be brave and turn back. I don't want to be stuck out here as nightfall comes. I turn around and there's nothing. I breathe out a deep sigh of relief and I start on the path and make my way forward. Now, I look towards where the tree is and it's still up there. It hasn't moved an inch, but I feel like my mind has miles away from the situation. I actually couldn't look at it other than that quick glance. I resorted to jogging past where the tree is. It's probably about 6 feet off of the trail, but I can't be sure again because I didn't take long enough to figure out exactly how close it was. I ended up jogging until I realised I have to stop because my eyes are starting to go a bit weird. Now, I start walking and I get to the other area where I can finish off my job for the day. The good thing about being out here usually is that you can finish the day pretty early most days and do what you want afterwards, but for me in this situation it wasn't a good thing. I'm walking as I notice some leaves fall and I get back to my cabin. Now back to my sanction and safety. It's the most relieved I've ever been to get back there in the time that I've been out. I decide that I need a sheltered day. I get in, I lock the door, close all the windows, and just have a relax. I fell asleep for about 2 or 3 hours and wake up again. I'm very dehydrated. I realise that after I'd been to the toilet and start drinking lots of water. I have a cold shower now to try and wake myself up. I finished writing up the reports of my day and findings. I actually decided to include it this time too. I thought something definitely wasn't adding up here, and it could have been chance that all these animal remains were out here, but I think it's very weird how there was no flesh and blood on any of it. I don't know what kind of animal or creature could be capable of that, but I know it certainly wasn't a hunter, because A, they're not allowed out here, and B, how on earth could they have possibly got it up there without us realising? I don't know, but I guess I don't really want to know. I remembered that I couldn't even focus on reading, which was my attempt at getaways in situations like this. I just stare at pictures of some of the couple of days old newspapers. I'm not really sure what to do. Funnily enough, I actually started doing a crossword and it calmed me down a lot. I think probably all of my brain was being used, probably the parts that aren't normally used from being in dangerous situations, and it made me fly through that thing. Or maybe it was a distraction of it all, and escaping, I don't know. But I eventually drift off asleep. I wake up again and the sunlight hits my face, almost aggressively, and I wake up once more before my alarm clock. Usually this would never happen unless I was stressed out about something or if I had something important the following day. I eventually round my energy up and make my way out of bed and quickly get all of my food in me and showered off, and I get ready for my day. My alarm clock then goes off almost in time with when I get a call from the radio. Now it was just a normal call. They're basically just asking how I'm doing, and I explain what's been going on. They actually take this quite seriously, and they're worried about illegal hunters in the area. But I explain, I don't think this is illegal hunters. I really think this is odd because there's no blood or anything. They also agree that this is a particularly weird detail of my endeavour out here so far, and they say just keep a note on it, and I start to get ready for my last day. I feel happy now and more confident knowing that my time here is now limited, so I head out and start my final day. Things are pretty normal, and I almost feel like the air tastes different. Everything feels more peaceful, and the usual sounds and surroundings seem to be as they were. Everything seemed a little bit too quiet for the last couple of days, and I honestly forget about what had happened. I make my way up one of my trails, and everything's lovely here. The trees are ones that I can see quite far along, and there's parts of them slowly falling down, and lots of plants are in blossom, and everything being in bloom makes it look so much nicer. The first weird thing I did see was a big spider on some parts of wood that I had to investigate and inspect, but it didn't jump on me, which is always a good thing, and it kept its distance, so I was happy. Now, I get towards the end of my day, and I'm feeling good. You know what I mentioned earlier about wanting to forget about all of the worries and stresses? That comes, and I have a really beautiful peace of mind moment where nothing bothers me. All of the stresses are gone, and I feel really happy out here. Now I actually start to feel a little bit sad knowing that my adventure's soon going to be over, and I have to return back to the normal parts of my job. The aspect of being out here in the cabin away from everyone and everything doesn't come too often, so I take a few moments to try and appreciate it more, and the sun begins to set, and I head in now. I've completed my tenure here, and it's time for me to return in the morning. I start packing out all of my things so I can leave quickly, and I head off to bed. Now I didn't fall asleep quickly and start doing another crossword. I actually think of trying to develop my own, then realise how boring I am, and eventually fall asleep. And I'm awoken. I hear the sound of knocking on the door. I say I'm gonna come, give me one moment, and start to find my things. They persist so, and I say louder, I'm coming, just give me a moment. It seems to go on constantly though, which I think is pretty weird, and it suddenly dawns on me, nobody's coming to relieve me. It's pretty late in the night time, and something's off. I get up, look out the window and can't see anybody. Still in a dazed state, I go outside and look around, and I think I can see somebody, but I'm not too sure. I presume that it's one of the other rangers there, and I say, hey, I'm gonna sleep a bit longer, let me just go to bed. And I go back in and fall asleep quite quickly. Now I'm woken up about 2 or 3 hours later by the same knock-in. This time, my conscious brain slips in, and something doesn't add up. I realise nobody should be out here but me, and why would they be waking me up so early in the morning? I realise that was not a ranger who I thought I saw. I get up quickly, and the knock-in this time really haunts me. I still have my clothes on from before, so I don't need to get changed at all, and I slowly peer out the window. As I do, I notice a deer standing up on its hind legs staring straight back at me. It doesn't look like a normal deer though. It looks terrifying and menacing, like something I've never seen before. No animal that I've known has ever been able to do this before in my life, so what on earth am I staring at? I then let out a gasp, and this thing runs on all fours. It runs into the forest and kind of takes on almost a human shape, and eventually gets off into the distance. I was stuck glued to that window staring for probably over an hour, trying to see if it come back, and daylight now breaks. There's nothing there. It's just me alone in the woods. I think that I might have went into a state of shock after that, and I grab the things that I need, and I start slowly making my way out towards where the back of the cabin is. I have to put something away, and as I'm doing so, I hear my name, Mike. Mikey, come here. Look, I need to show you something. It sounds just like the other ranger who I've been communicating through on the radio with. I say hello, then go to stop myself. This can't be Mikey. I then go back in and I radio in for Mikey, who answers. I say oh nothing and I'm coming back soon, and he says see you in a bit. I think maybe he was talking on the radio and I somehow left it on. I then go back out and start making my way through the forest. But then I hear it again. Help, please help. Mikey, I'm hurt, you've got to help me. That's when I realised something was way off. He wasn't out here in the woods. In fact, it's not physically possible he could have reached me here in this time. I then start to walk very quickly, and the voice, it goes away, but then it returns again, seeming to follow me. But this does not sound like a person though. It sounded like something trying to be a person. There were breaks in its voice, and it just sounded off, where it would go deeper every so often. Mike, come here, please, I beg you. Followed by crying. The crying sounds followed me for probably another 7 minutes, until eventually I get further and further away from them, and I only hear weeping and the odd Mikey, sounding more and more desperate. I know for 100% fact it was not my buddy out there. This was something far worse and menacing. The relief I feel when I see my truck is something I can't describe. I throw everything in the back and slam the door. I don't know why I slammed it so loud. I think it was to let whatever was out there know that I was in safety now. And I start up and I make my way back. I eventually get back and I remembered the entire drive just feeling very weird, almost like I wasn't in my own body. I get into the station and guess what? My buddy's there. He was apparently calling out for me desperately in the woods. I say, hey, were you out there in the woods? And one of the other rangers looks at me weird. I say, I heard your voice in the woods calling out for me, but it wasn't you. I then start saying more of what happened, and one of the rangers who's a bit older looks at me and says, yeah, you encountered a Skinwalker. I look at him like he's crazy, but he says, you know, they imitate voices. And for some reason I suddenly remembered the other detail, the weird looking deer thing I'd seen. I explained that I was very delirious and very tired and that I don't think it was anything, but he then explains that apparently this is exactly what they're supposed to look like. I then tell them that I'm never going back there again and that there were skulls out there that have to be investigated. He then says that he's going to send a few of the boys out there in a couple of weeks to figure it out. I say, weeks? Are you crazy? I say, they're going to be gone by then. He says, no, I'm not risking it, and looks very serious at me again. Now, it turns out that an investigation went out there to find the skulls, and you know what? They could never find a thing. Apparently some of the other rangers, when they're out there, heard other voices of who they thought were other rangers, even being myself, but apparently nobody was out there. Apparently the voices actually went on for the following months before it wasn't heard again for the next 8 years, and eventually I left. Now, I don't want to jump to the conclusion that what I encountered was a Skinwalker, but from how they described it and what I saw, I don't know what else it could have possibly been.